Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting, and for the 14th of December 2020, our last one for an interesting year. So we're starting with a public forum, and the recording of the public forum, not our recording of the public forum, will be taken for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, members of the public agree to being recorded. Aubrey City accepts no liability for any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive remarks or gestures that are made during the course of the public forum. Opinions expressed or statements made by individuals are the opinions or statements of those individuals and do not imply any form of endorsement by Aubrey City. Recordings are protected by copyright and owned by Aubrey City. No part may be copied, recorded, reproduced or transmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. Any recording is not and shall not be taken to be an official record of Aubrey City or discussion depicted therein. Okay, so just a reminder to the speakers, there is a strict 5-minute time limit, and I'll be calling you the 5 minutes tonight. We've got a very big agenda, so we're starting off with Julie Garoni from 652 in relation to 656 Pemberton Street. And she's speaking against the request for review. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to present tonight. Next slide, please. We believe the request for review documentation fails to warrant the granting of a review. The development remains not substantially the same. The retaining wall, studio garage height and windows remain inadequately addressed. The request for review documentation includes a few minimal changes, with the developer aiming to keep the benefits gained by not building to the DA. Next slide, please. There are now 38 variations or changes in the accompanying mod of consent that the developer wants approved. Still not a complete list. Replacement of an enclosed veranda with 3 southern elevation windows is omitted. Has anything else been omitted? Next slide, please. Nothing on site has changed, but the retaining wall design paperwork has changed once again. How is this possible? The retaining wall was completed in 2018. The encroaching footings, the graded granular fill and the mod of consent presented to council on 25th of May have disappeared. Next slide, please. Information as constructed is dubious, prepared almost 2 years after the actual works were undertaken. It can't be verified, it differs from the construction certificate, and it contradicts the on-site evidence and a number of other documents showing footings and backfill extend beyond the developer's property boundary. Next slide, please. If we check Habitat's document dated the 18th of August 2020, it states there's no formalised drainage. It also states the retaining wall has been backfilled with aggregate. No formalised drainage, backfill with aggregate. The graded granular fill equals aggregate. This backfilled aggregate drainage is clearly observed on our property. It's an encroachment. Next slide, please. Any clear evidence submitted by the developer's surveyor is contradicted by Walpole's findings that the retaining wall is located partly over the boundary. Surely any retaining wall encroachment should only be clarified by an independent surveyor, not the developers. Next slide, please. The on-site evidence verifies the modification of consent design presented to council on the 25th of May 2020. It also verifies the 18th of August 2020 Habitat document. Circled in red, you can see the words graded granular fill. In the image, you can clearly see graded granular fill or backfill aggregate on our property right close to our shed foundations. Next slide, please. The retaining wall design timeline. In March 2019, we had a drawing of a spoon drain sent to us to put on our property. In August 2019, there's a 90 ag drain that suddenly appeared. Next slide, please. February and March 2020, and the one presented to the 25th of May 2020 to council, the design had footings and also the graded granular fill clearly on our property. Moving on to June 2020, the retaining wall had been removed. It was now a fencing issue. October 2020, the latest design, there's no drainage, there's no western footings. Next slide, please. The proposed 250mm decrease in height fails to address the built-out reality that we experience. Developer aims to keep 77% of the 1,070mm gained by not building to the DA. It's not a balanced outcome. Our property is severely devalued by a height and 3 large window combo. Next slide, please. The 250mm reduction fails to improve the situation. The 3 windows remain at the current height, dominating our vista, and there's no valid reason for the increase in the height of the studio garage. Next slide, please. Many residents of Aubrey have a graded drain at the entrance to the garage that provides safe, level vehicular access whilst preventing water from entering the building. The developer also had this option. Next slide, please. In the original DA, the studio garage first-storey southern elevation had an enclosed veranda and primary screens, not 3 large windows. Next slide, please. Our original DA submission in 2018 specifically listed our concerns about the southern elevation and its potential to detrimentally impact our property. Removal of the enclosed veranda with privacy screens and the inclusion of 3 large unscreened windows has made our concerns a nightmarish reality. Next slide, please. The as-built increased width of the studio garage and the as-built increased northern setback results in an as-built southern elevation being located approximately 800 millimetres further south than in the original DA. The as-built southern elevation windows are now approximately 800 millimetres closer to our backyard. Add to this the extra height of the studio garage and you simply can't escape these windows. Next slide, please. Here we are in our front yard and here we are walking towards our side gate. Next slide, please. Here we are walking along our side path. Next slide, please. Here we are in our entertaining area and private space, or even just sitting on our lounge room couch with the curtains opened. Next slide, please. Here we are pegging out clothes at our clothesline. Next slide, please. Here we are walking from our garage to our back door. Next slide, please. The windows confront anyone, front yard, backyard, side path, entertaining area, opening curtains let light into our living and kitchen area, sitting on our couch. Our property has been devalued and our amenity destroyed. Would you or any other Aubrey resident want these windows high in the sky above your backyard? It wouldn't pass a pub test. Next slide, please. Instead of fixing the root causes, we are told that high sills or reduction in window size will fix our amenity issues. Really? Next slide, please. The studio garage has no eaves, no pitch roof. The viewer can't determine if the windows are high sill. Hence, high sills improving amenity becomes redundant if the viewer doesn't believe or feel these windows are high sill windows and no one is looking. Perceived privacy, overlooking adverse amenity occurs. Next slide, please. High sills are simply leverage for the removal of angled privacy screens that restrict the developer's views. It doesn't benefit us. Surely high sill DCP compliance is overridden by the fact these windows were not in the original DA and the as-built southern elevation is not the same as the original DA. It is located approximately 800 millimetres further south. Next slide, please. Approximately 35% of the window height is currently hidden by waterproofing. The proposed reduction is only going to be about another 10% more. These windows remain large, not small. Next slide, please. We believe the developer's suggestion that a survey will restore the confidence of the community in the planning process is false. It wouldn't pass the pub test. In reality, the community expects developers to build to a DA, and if they don't, the expectation is the developer will fix it. Next slide, please. We also believe the community doesn't expect a developer to argue that reducing the height of the studio garage is expensive and a 250mm height reduction is balanced, or continue to submit many different designs for a retaining wall physically completed in 2018. Next slide, please. Additionally, the community would expect any survey to be conducted by an independent surveyor, not the developer's surveyor. The only thing the developer's request for review does is validate the community's belief that all you can do is hope a developer never buys a block of land or the property next to you. Next slide, please. The information in the request for review has the intent of manoeuvring around the refusal given by Council on the 25th of May 2020. If granted, this review will set a precedent for developers to manoeuvre around an original DA to build whatever they want. This request for review should be dismissed. Next slide, please. We acknowledge that the reviewers added condition removal of windows 3.2 and 3.3 in the upper floor level of the southern wall of the studio would improve our amenity, not completely, but to some extent. However, the increased height of the studio garage and the retaining wall, including its drainage and footings, have not been adequately resolved. Next slide, please. Therefore, if a review is granted, the modification of consent should be refused since the development remains not substantially the same. The studio garage height has not been adequately addressed. Issues surrounding the retaining wall, contradicting designs and encroachment are too important to be listed as a condition and figured out later. This development is not an example of strategic planning that enhances the lives of Aubrey citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Questions, councillors? No? Yep. There you go.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Julie, are you aware that a request to review is only that and not so council have to decide tonight to review the refusal or to review the decision that it made. So we might decide to review, but then the options are to either refuse or accept the change the A. So the review itself, what you're arguing, should be dismissed. Basically, we're being asked the question, are we going to review this? Yes, we might, but once that's decided, we then have to make another decision about whether we refuse the DA or accept the DA. So I'm just making sure that you're aware of what you've been speaking about is, not having being, asking the question for a review. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I've sort of weaved both of those things in there because of the ways in which it could go.
Okay.
So I know that, they're asking the review.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that you understood that requesting a review doesn't naturally then mean that we're going to approve the DA. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Just neglected to mention that Joanna Duck and Stephanie Anderson from NGH Consultants, independent consultants, are available during the public forum and when we consider this DA for questions by the councillors. Okay, thank you. We now have Peter O'Dwyer in relation to items 13.1 and 13.2, 656 Pemberton Street. He's against the request for review. Peter.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, fine. I'd like to just quickly first speak to the first item, which is CM 13.1 in relation to the consideration of the request for review of the refusal, and would make the following statements: that Council's decision of 25 May 2020 to refuse the modification as it was presented at that time remains a wholly lawful and logical outcome in respect of a development that not only was inconsistent with the original DA, but was also inconsistent with key aspects of the construction certificate, which itself was at variance to the DA. To reiterate comments in our correspondence of the 4th of November, the problem from the developer's perspective in relation to this latest set of plans, which contain at least 38 documented changes, is that every document that's been submitted in support of this application is almost at pains to convince the decision makers that the development remains substantially the same. That is, by inference, there is no material change to what was previously refused. In other words, if one was to take these submissions on behalf of the applicant on face value, then it remains an indisputable contention that the plans now presented as a basis of support for modification must be substantially the same as those refused by council. That there simply appears to be no substantive basis for council to entertain the current request for refusal. It's been our client's consistent position for the years that this matter has been drawn out, that no amount of tinkering with the plans and variations of measurements, sometimes only to a few centimetres, will do little or anything to address legitimate amenity concerns that have been raised, including those raised by Julie tonight. This then leads to a submission in respect of the first item, CM 13.1, to support a resolution of council that it simply discharges its responsibilities under section 8.31 of the Act by resolving not to review the decision. If, on the other hand, council is of a mind to review its decision, then I would offer a few quick words in relation to item CM 13.2, which is the request for modification. Firstly, the various submissions lodged both on behalf of that and by our clients are considered to form a strong basis to support a refusal of the latest request for modification. And these submissions are attached throughout the business paper and contribute to the 2,000 pages that are on the agenda tonight. I just want to speak in relation to the contentious retaining wall issue, and I propose to add little to our past submissions, largely on the basis that I've been not only the subject of a solicitor's letter of demand to retract my previous comments, but also last week I was advised by the Planning Institute of Australia that I'm now the subject of a code of conduct complaint lodged by Mr. Emkich. Suffice to say, all I would like to do at this point in time is draw the particular attention of councils to the conclusions drawn by council's independent assessor that there remains uncertainty in respect of the actual location of the components of the retaining wall, including drainage and backfill, and that proposed conditions A11, A14 bracket 5 and E7, as previously tabled at the council meeting of 25 May 2020, are all considered to remain valid notwithstanding the surveyor's letter and the SJE works as executed plans that have been submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions, councillors? No, all good. Thanks, Peter, for your presentation. Okay, with 2.3, Jeff Emerson in relation to 656 Jones Street, and he does not support any of the recommendations. Jeff? You're on mute, mate.
Mr Mayor, Kevin and council members, thank you for the opportunity to address council in this public forum. My name is Jeff Emerson, residing at Unit 2, 670 Jones Street and representing the residents. Our precinct in Jones Street is in the Bongilla Conservation Area, and as such, anyone building or renovating here should respect this and abide by the requirements and be familiar with these when they move here. This housing precinct is primarily of a Californian bungalow theme, and this has enhanced it greatly, and it is currently a showpiece area admired by all in its current form by the residents and the wider community. The Aubrey Development Control Plan provides objectives and controls to ensure we conserve and protect the character of the area, which strongly contributes to the heritage, uniqueness and attractiveness of the urban fabric of our city of Aubrey. These objectives and controls do not aim to prevent modern development, but rather they ensure that this occurs in a way that does not detract from recognised heritage values. These requirements ensure that alterations, additions and developments are sympathetic and respectful of a heritage area. As an example, the renovations currently being carried out at 622 Jones Street reflect all of the above, and the house is fast becoming an outstanding single-storey modern improvement in this area. The proposed additions, however, at the flats in question at 656 Jones Street certainly do not. This development appears to be being rushed through. A very, very large number of pages had to be digested to follow the history of this application, and we were given only 3 business days since the revised plan could be viewed and the letter sent to the residents. The number of changes appear to be significant, with more time required, and we thought this would have supported the process starting again. This flat roof, box-like addition overshadowing solar panels in the neighbouring property and built mainly of cladding located at the back of the front brick construction section is not compliant with the heritage expectations in our area, in our view. Some solutions, such as limiting the shadow over the neighbour's solar panels, actually leads to more problems because lowering the parapet exposes the flat skillion roof. Other residents, Jess and Marianne, will cover this more fully. Further, the Heritage Conservation document notes that the colour, texture, style, size and type of finish of any materials to be used on the exterior of the building be compared to other period buildings in the vicinity. That is the Californian bungalow heritage style found in our precinct. And this planned renovation at 656 Jones Street certainly does not satisfy this condition. Reading through the assessment report to you, any additions or changes to residents in Jones Street should add to and indeed enhance the heritage and conservation of the area. But the double-storey, box-like and predominant cladding design do not do this in our view. My involvement in the petition to you and in 2 previous runs relating to 674 Jones Street fully emphasises that the vast majority of residents, as evidenced by up to 90 signatures, are against the proposed extra-large second-storey building, not in line with the heritage accepted styles in this precinct. The visibility factor also needs to be considered, as not only is the extension visible from the front of Jones Street, but it is very visible from the back by all people participating in sporting competitions on the Aubrey High School Oval and to all people walking along the pedestrian path between Kiwara and Jones Street at the back also. We are fully aware the Bongilla conservation requirements may be challenged by heritage consultants such as Deborah Kemp, but this is not in the spirit of why the majority of people moved into this top area and agreed to abide by the expected conditions. This is not an area in our city where you can build anything you want to, as you're expected to abide by the requirements, and our council should continue to ensure that this is upheld. As well as homes, even fences have been constructed to satisfy the Bongilla conservation requirements. We all need to work hard to maintain the spirit and standard of this great precinct and see that it is maintained as a top heritage area. All other modifications to buildings in Jones Street have been carried out respecting the Barngilla conservation requirements, so all people should be prepared to follow the same process. People wishing to build large modern designs predominantly out of cladding can do so in other areas of this great city, not subjected to the requirements and conditions of this conservation area. There is no doubt that the two-storey modern design proposed for 656 Jones Street does not comply with the relevant parts of the DCP. The structure is not sympathetic to the Barngilla Conservation Heritage Conservation Document, and approval of this application will set a precedent to allow other dwellings similar to the one proposed. Once the heritage nature is lost, it is gone forever, as is occurring in the centre of large cities such as Melbourne right now. A very relevant article protecting our heritage appeared in the Herald Sun 2 weeks ago about protecting heritage, and I quote from this article: skyrocketing property prices over the past 2 decades has demanded high density living and the optimal use of land, particularly in inner Melbourne. But as a result of that pressure and transformation, too much character has been lost where it should have been preserved. The article goes on to say that the state's heritage laws are too weak and have failed to protect buildings which help define our history. This article should certainly be ringing bells for our city of Aubrey. I plead with the council to enforce the requirements of the Barngilla Heritage Conservation Document and stick to these, or else to rescind it all and open it up like other areas where residents can just about build anything they wish. I urge you to support all the residents of Jones Street and in the wider community in maintaining the conservation qualities and the spirit of the requirements in this pristine area, and ask that this application be declined by you. Thank you for permitting me to participate in this public forum.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Mr. Emerson? Councillor Gleichen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Emerson. Mr. Emerson, in the report that we've received, we have diagrams that indicate what the original proposal was with regards to cladding and style for the build. And then in this report, it gives us the revised program or the revised build. Do you think that the revised suggestion is better than the original build suggestion, or what the was originally intended to be built? You have made comment about the skillion roof, but the appearance otherwise, the aesthetics of the build and the products used.
I think the colour is. I think the colour is an improvement. I think what's been done to try and the shadowing of the solar panels in the neighbouring house may be satisfactory for the solar panels, but I think then that's created another problem in exposing the flat roof skillion nature of the building. And also, in order to accommodate this, the building has been moved, and in the movement of that building, it's been moved closer to the other neighbour. She will elaborate on this further in her talk to you.
Thank you for answering the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for your presentation. Okay, we now have Marianne Jones speaking against the recommendation for 656 Jones Street. Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you for the opportunity to address council. My name is Marianne Jones, and I'm here as a resident of Jones Street and as a voice of our collective Jones Street community who oppose this development application. Firstly, I would like to address our concerns as owners of the adjoining property. The shadowing of our solar panels has been addressed by moving the building 1/2 metre to the north and removing the parapet wall. Although it has addressed the shading issue, this changes the look of the building significantly and we believe is a mishmash of design which poses a new concern. The development application refers to our family room as an adjoining garage, when in fact we have council approved plans dating back to 2005 to convert the garage to a family room. Again, council planner's commentary incorrectly states that the development will not overshadow any private living space when in fact it will block 1/3 of our natural light to this area. It was strongly recommended by council that a meeting take place with the adjoining neighbours to discuss concerns. However, there has been no contact with either neighbour. We would like to point out that we would be more than happy to meet with planners and applicants to discuss our concerns should this be beneficial. As a voice of our collective Jones Street community, I believe it is important to paint a picture of those residents who oppose this development. The joint submission was signed by an overwhelming number of residents who are professional people, engineers, doctors, retirees, electricians, business owners, and so on. We have worked hard to preserve our properties and stay true to the heritage and character of the precinct. It was mentioned by a new Jones Street resident recently that they had looked into the Bongilla conservation restrictions, knowing they could not be built out by dense, multi-storey, modern-style developments and out of keeping with the irreplaceable heritage character was a huge incentive for them to buy a property in Jones Street. As a collective, the residents of Jones Street do not oppose development, however, do oppose the style, materials and the two-storey structure of the current application. This current design does not align with the intent of the Bongilla conservation. The DCP states that the Jones Street precinct is a good example of an intact central Aubrey residential street dating from the 1920s. The DCP provides objectives and controls to ensure we conserve and restore the character of the area. These objectives and controls ensure that future development occurs in a way that does not detract from recognised heritage values. These heritage values ensure that alterations, additions and developments are sympathetic and respectful of the heritage area. We believe that this development application does not meet the objectives of the DCP, specifically the Bongilla conservation. This latest design is confused and does not align with the intent of the conservation. The shipping container-like material, the two-storey structure and the skillion roof proposed will have a detrimental impact on the Bongilla conservation and heritage conservation. Approval of this application sets a precedent to allow similar developments in the future and will permanently damage the Bongilla conservation. In addition, we do not agree that just by setting the dwelling at the back of the property negates the impact of the structure. It doesn't matter where the building is located, whether it's at the back, in the middle or at the front of the property, it is unsympathetic to the character and intent of the conservation. As passionate residents who wish to preserve the history of this area and honour the Bongilla conservation, ask that the development application be declined. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Thanks, Marianne. Question, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You mentioned conversion of your garage to a living area and you mentioned a date. Can you just remind me again what the date was?
Yes, we believe it was back in 2005.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question, Mr Mayor, to Mr Christie. The submission then was that plans approved in 2005 allow conversion of garage to living space. Would those plans still be valid? 2005?
Thank you for the question for you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the plans were in 2003. The council agreed the conversion. Obviously, it may have occurred sometime post that, and that was as a rumpus room and then the patio out the front. So once they converted that area, then it remains valid unless they put an alternate consent in to change the use.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Marianne, hypothetically, if you owned the block next door, what would you build?
Personally, I would get approval, obviously. I would probably do something similar to what's happened with Jeff Emerson's house or unit. They've got two lovely units on the block and they're very sympathetic to the existing streetscape and the buildings surrounding them. There are a number of units that have like similar kind of construction and it can be done very, very well.
Thank you.
Councillor Clacken.
Thank you. Marianne, you heard me ask the question of Mr Emerson. Does he prefer the aesthetics of the original application or the revised application, notwithstanding the skillion roof?
Which design do I prefer? Yes,
The original with the metal cladding or with the timber cladding. They're very different.
They are.
Yes, they're very different.
suggestions.
I totally agree. I think there's been significant changes to the existing application, or the original application. And to be honest, I believe that they should put a new DA in. That's a really tough call because I don't like either of them in this precinct, to be honest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for your presentation. Okay, we've got Jessica Madden-Jones now. Doesn't support the recommendation of 656 Jones Street.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Jess Madden. I'm from 658 Jones Street. Thanks for the opportunity to address council again regarding the development application for 656 Jones Street. Firstly, I wish to express my disappointment in the lack of consultation and communication with regards to the progression of this development application to a second council meeting. When the motion for the development application was voted against at the council meeting on the 26th of October, Councillor Conn stated that the development application clearly did not meet community expectations, and during debate, the applicants were encouraged to consult neighbours. Despite the applicant's motion being lost, we were realistic in our expectations that the applicants would be keen to proceed with their intentions to develop. We anticipated the opportunity to either provide fresh comment on a new development application and/or discuss directly with the applicants and other neighbours an agreeable compromise. However, despite the fact that the new plan includes changes which exacerbate the impact of the development on our property, the Council Planning Department did not provide any opportunity for us to view the revised plans until the council agenda was released on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 9th of December. As such, my partner and I, who are both lay people in the context of planning and construction, have had only 3 business days notice at the busiest time of year, both professionally and personally, in order to review these revised plans and attempt to consult appropriate professionals to understand the impact of the new design on our property and to create a coherent statement to present to council. I consider this a show of bad faith on the part of the applicants and the Council Planning Department. As outlined in my letter objecting to the original development application, we are not anti-development, and there are several other existing multi-dwelling developments on our stretch of Jones Street from Wise Street to Poole Street. These developments, with respect to both character and size, exist in harmony with the heritage homes in our street. These include 646/648 Jones Street, which contains 1 3-bedroom dwelling and 1 2-bedroom dwelling. 637 Jones Street, which contains 1 2-bedroom and 2 1-bedroom dwellings. 670 Jones Street, which contains 2 3-bedroom dwellings. And 692 Jones Street, which contains 2 3-bedroom dwellings. This proposed development to add a 3-bedroom townhouse to a block which already contains an existing 3-bedroom unit and 2-bedroom unit represents an unprecedented level of development and housing density for our stretch of Jones Street. The 2nd-storey floor space required to achieve this level of density is the main factor contributing to the design aspects that are unacceptable to us. I believe that the proposed level of 2nd-storey floor space will be ultimately incompatible with any design that can fulfill community expectations around overlook, shadowing, imposition and character. Because of the sheer size, the revisions made by the applicants to try and address one concern with overshadowing have ultimately exacerbated other concerns with regards to the visual imposition of the structure and also style and character considerations with respect to our location within the Bonegilla Conservation Area. In the revised plans, the proposed structure has been moved 0.5 metres closer to our property line. This will further exacerbate the visual imposition and intrusion to our backyard of the 6-metre high north-facing wall and will impact on our recreational amenity as it looms over us. The standing seam colour bond material in the proposed colour of wallaby grey, in combination with the sheer height of the proposed development, will create a feeling that we are boxed in our own backyard by a structure that will resemble a shipping container stack at a port. Furthermore, the movement of the proposed structure 0.5 metre closer to our property also raises questions regarding the impact of the development on the microclimate of our backyard. In my first letter, I stated my concern that a structure built from Colorbond, which is specifically marketed for its heat reflecting properties, would detrimentally affect the microclimate of my backyard, in particular the southeastern corner where vegetables are grown and where we often sit. The Council Planning Department stated in their initial response that any impact on microclimate would be mitigated by the setback to the boundaries and thus would not be significant, however did not provide any specific evidence of their assessment of this impact. Now that the structure has been moved 0.5 metres closer to our boundary line, and the structure is also lighter in colour, which is likely to increase heat reflection properties further, the potential for impact on microclimate is increased. I would like to request that the Council Planning Department please provide information regarding what method was employed to assess the potential impact on microclimate, what degree of temperature change is considered significant, and whether the impact on microclimate has been reassessed using the new variables of the revised design. In summary, the revised plans described by the applicants not only failed to fully address our original concerns, also outlined by Marianne and Jeff, but create new concerns and really should have been subject to an entirely new development application, or at least direct discussion and negotiation with existing neighbouring ratepayers in order to provide opportunity for a fair community consultation process. Thank you again for the opportunity to address Council, and I trust that you will take these issues into consideration when assessing this motion.
Thanks, Jess. Councillor Vanderman. Yep, no problem.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, I know. It's fixed now, I hope.
Thanks, yes.
Mr. Christie, there's been some assertions around the timelines in terms of the second or the changes to the DA. Can you provide us some information in regards to those timelines, please?
Yep, and thank you for the question, and for you, Mr. Mayor. Probably just to clarify a point of view, Council obviously this in its meeting in October did not make any determination on the application, so there is no new development application to be made because the current application was undetermined by Council. So following that Council meeting, we did contact the applicants and they also viewed the Council meeting. We strongly encouraged them to make contact with the neighbour to the south as per discussions in Council. Obviously, it's up to the applicant whether they wish to avail themselves of that opportunity or not. Council cannot force them to have discussions. So then following the Council meeting, Council was provided with amended plans, as outlined in the report, the changes in those amended plans. From a Council staff perspective, we do not believe that the amended plans address the substance of the community's concerns, which is evidenced tonight. There's still clear concern from the community about the height of the development, about its design, about its visibility from adjoining properties from public spaces such as Aubrey High School. And so therefore we considered that the validity of the submissions initially provided was still the same. And so therefore it was then presented to the next available Council meeting for Council to either determine that they were happy to either approve or refuse the application, or to make a formal request for further information if councillors were still unsatisfied with the information provided.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Vanderman. There are no further questions, so thanks, Jess. Thanks for your presentation tonight. Okay, that concludes all our presentations. There was a written submission made by Terry Jones to the group. Did everyone get a copy of that? Yeah, excellent. Okay. All right, so that concludes our public forum, and we'll now move into the business of the evening, which is our council meeting. Pardon?
I request a 2-minute break before you start the council meeting.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
2-minute break before we start the council meeting. Thank you. Where'd everyone go?
Hey Jess, just quickly, I'm going to remove you from the meeting, but in Terence's email, it'll have the YouTube link where you can watch on YouTube for the determination of the council meeting.
Yeah, that's cool. We all go around to each other's houses to watch, so thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, bye.
That line moved from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. And comes up there like that. And over there. And so there's a highlight window just here, which is 1.8. That bedroom window is exactly the same. And obviously the roof below didn't change.
Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday the 14th of December 2020. We stand for the opening prayer and acknowledgement. Thanks. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff. Thank you, ball boys. Okay, recording and webcasting of the meeting. The council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Aubrey City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations, I have three. The first one is from Councillor Graham Doxey, non-pecuniary, less than significant. Brief description. I'm the President of the City of Aubrey RSL sub-branch. Item number CM 13.15, display of civic flags. The action is to remain in the chamber and participate in the debate. The second one is from Councillor David Thurley, non-pecuniary, significant. I'm a member of the Southern Region JRPP. 13.4 DA 10.20237909.1. The action is leave the chamber. Councillor Hank Vanderven, non-pecuniary, significant. I'm a panel member of the Southern Region Planning Panel, and the item is CM 13.4 DA 10.20237909.1. The action is leave the chamber. Mr. Zachnich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This advice to the council meeting relates to disclosure of political donations and the requirements of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act. The Act under sections 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contributions plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Zachnich. Excuse me. Saying 4, apologies. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Moves the following recommendation. The council receives, notes and accepts the apology of Councillor D. Cameron and grants leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM5, there is no mayoral minute. Action plan, CM6. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. Actions complete for noting only. Actions awaiting response from external parties, actions in progress and long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There are no further questions or debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM7, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday, the 23rd of November 2020. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move the following recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 23 November 2020 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderbilt.
Happy to second that motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
There being no further debate or question, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM8, reports from community forums held on the Tuesday, the 6th of October 2020. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives and notes the report of the community forum held on Tuesday, 6th October 2020 regarding development application 10 2023 7625.1 46 Tweed Court, Thurgoona.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to move the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no notices of motions or rescissions, no presentation of deputations. CM11, 11.1 minutes of the Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 8th of September. Thank you, councillors. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, that the council receives and notes and accept the minutes and recommendations of the Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 8th September 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor King, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you.
There being no questions or debate, I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 11.2, the minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 3rd of November. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 3rd November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second that.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
I'd just like to note the important contribution of our community members. We have a number of community members that really put in a lot of effort and enables us to have a brilliant strategy in this city for environmental matters.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Minutes of the Audit and Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on the Wednesday, the 4th of November. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. To move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 4 November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second that motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gleichen, do you wish to speak to that?
No, it was the meeting where we discussed the year in review, including the audit of the New South Wales. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against the motion is carried. 11.4 minutes of the Wonga Wetlands Conservation Association meeting held on the 6th of November 2020. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation motion. The council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Wonga Wetlands Conservation Association annual general meeting and ordinary meeting held on Friday, the 6th of November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, do you wish
Happy
to?
to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no questions or debate, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Minutes of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, the 11th of November 2020. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gleichen.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 11 November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gleichen, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you.
There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.6 minutes of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on Wednesday, the 18th of November 2020. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to move the recommendation motion. The council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on Wednesday, the 18th of November 2020.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Conn.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Happy to second it.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No question or debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We're getting there. 11.7, the minutes of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 19th of November. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on Thursday, 19th of November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to those?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
There's no question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. It's at 11.8 minutes of the Murray-Darling Association Region 1 AGM on Friday the 20th of November. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accept the minutes and recommendations of the Murray-Darling Association Region 1 AGM held on Friday, 20th November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Gleichen.
Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Just to briefly note that I was re-elected as Chair of Region 1 and Councillor Gaffney of Indigo Shire and Councillor Wharton of Towong Shire were elected as executive officers.
Thank you. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.9 minutes of Sports Aubrey Advisory Committee meeting held on the 25th of November 2020. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the recommendation of the motion, the council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Sports Aubrey Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 25th of November 2020.
Thank you. Second is Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr Mayor, for the opportunity. First of all, we had a lot of really good grant applications again in terms of the Sports Aubrey grants, and you will notice in the minutes there were at least 8 organisations that got significant funding for projects that they deemed would benefit their club and obviously also the city and the community. I wish to note that the input from the committee was fantastic in terms of making suggestions around how some of these projects could save money. And I think the result of that was that I just conservatively, I think that with going back to those grant applications and asking them to just perhaps lower their expectations of what they were wanting to do, like instead of having a new container, having used containers that would have saved in terms of grant money about $7,000, which can now go towards other people wanting to get grants. So I'd like to thank the committee members for their input and also the staff for their continuing efforts in making the sports in this community a lot better. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.10 is the minutes of the Aubrey Local Traffic Committee held on Thursday the 26th. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Aubrey Local Traffic Committee meeting held on Thursday, 26th November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Second the motion.
Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to raise anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's been a busy year. A lot of things discussed. I'd like to thank Councillor Doxey for his previous chairmanship. He did a great job, and hopefully next year the local traffic committee will continue to do good work for the community and drivers and cyclists and pedestrians.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.11 minutes of the Albury Airport Users Advisory Committee meeting held on the 2nd of December. Councillor Vanderman.
I'll defer to Councillor Glacken. I think she's chair.
Councillor Glacken.
Thanks.
Councillor Glacken.
I'm
He's
happy
deferred.
to second.
No, he's
Councillor Van
deferred. Have to accept his deferral.
Okay. To move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Aubrey Airport Users Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 2nd December 2020, and thank Councillor Van der Ven.
Councillor Doxey.
Can I defer to Councillor Van der Ven?
No.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Someone second. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Very briefly, this is a good committee and an important part of ensuring that we keep in touch with the users of these facilities, just as with every other committee. But it was highlighted in the meetings this year on a number of occasions that the input from the members, because of their professional involvement out at the airport, have been extremely valuable, as has the relationship that we have, the strength of the relationship we have with the providers, so the RPT providers, the airlines. So fantastic work that we do with them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Any further questions or debate? Councillor Van der Ven.
Just quickly, Mr. Mayor, we've done 11 minutes of committees here, and can I, on behalf of the council, and it probably was done at each of the meetings, but place on record our thanks to all of those committee members for their participation, and wish all of them all the best for Christmas and a happy, safe and prosperous new year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Ven. And just like to mention to thanking the staff for convening those meetings and certainly being part of those meetings at all different hours and moments in the day. So happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 12.1, the documents for sealing. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of two signatories, authorised to fix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure. A, Aubrey City lease to Aubrey and District Aero Club Incorporated, Lot 43, Aubrey Airport, 6-year term with 10-year option, FIL 20/02-807. B, Low Cost Loans Initiative, funding agreement for Thurgoona-Willinga Growth Precinct between Aubrey City Council and the LCLI Administrator for and on behalf of the Crown in right of the State of New South Wales. C, Low Cost Loans Initiative, funding agreement for Thurgoona Link Road between Aubrey City Council and the LCLI Administrator for and on behalf of the Crown in right of the State of New South Wales.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor King.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No further question or debate. I have to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We're up to 13.1, which is the development application 10.2018.35932.3. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the matter be deferred to the first council meeting in February.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Stashbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Briefly, Mr Mayor, this is a difficult matter, and we've had a number of forums and discussions about it, and we were confronted with a staff report plus 400 other pages of reports about this matter. My initial feeling was to defer the matter to give councillors more time to read something which was highly technical. I had come to another conclusion, but given that the developer sought time through his solicitors, I have no comment on the validity or otherwise of his request, but I then thought that the matter could be deferred and considered in greater detail over the next couple of months. I'm sure we could spend our Christmases and early January in a much better activity, but my hope is that we think about it a lot, and in February we will determine the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There appears to be no further questions or debate on the item. I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour as the division. Councillor Stashbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Cohen, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. So 13.2 is not to be dealt with in light of the latest decision. So we're up to 13.3, which is the development application 10.2020.37511.1. Thank you, councillors. Anyone game? Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and notes the contents of the report and refuses development application 10.2020375111.1 due to the following reasons. At GP 14593 at 656 Jones Street. That the applicant has not consulted with the neighbours as was requested by council, and that the application is not consistent with the thank you very much. With the Bonagilla Heritage Conservation area. The application, the development application does not meet the expectations of the neighbourhood, and the application, development application, has been shown by the neighbours and the people living in the street to not be consistent with their expectations. Thank you.
Thank you. So there we are with the
Very similar to that.
the new motion.
I'll just double check that. Yeah, heritage, good.
So could I beg your forbearance and get that
Yeah, I'm happy to read that. And that was the other one I was searching for too, that the amenity of the adjoining properties. Yeah, yeah, thank you. So happy to read that.
Yeah, if you could just read it out again for the record, thanks.
That council, A, receives and notes a report. B, council resolved to refuse to grant development consent 10.2020375111.1 for the following reasons. Roman 1, that development is not appropriate with consideration to the heritage characteristics of the Bonagilla Heritage Conservation Areas outlined in Part 7 of the Aubrey DCP 2010, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of the section 4.151 in brackets A in brackets Roman numeral 3 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, to the development will have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the adjoining property owners and the locality in terms of the streetscape, overshadowing bulk and scale, and therefore contrary to the provisions of section 4.151B and the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. And 3, the development does not appropriately reflect and address the heritage characteristics of the Bonegilla Heritage Conservation Area and will have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the adjoining property owners and the locality in terms of streetscape, overshadowing bulk and scale, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 4.151D and the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second that motion.
Councillor Gleichen, just to open debate. Thanks.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I have some sympathy with the development or the application in as much as it is land that is owned privately and therefore there is scope for the person who owns that land to undertake a development as they see fit and as they wish. However, this development, unfortunately, does have an unacceptable impact on the neighbours. They have taken some measures to try and alleviate that impact, but in turn have subsequently or consequently changed that effect so that now neighbours on both sides of the development have an unacceptable impact. So they haven't really mitigated the impact. They've actually made it worse in many regards. I do not believe that we as council can say that we don't like a building and therefore we won't approve it or we won't support it. But it is obvious that the applicant is trying desperately to meet the expectations of the neighbours with the subsequent plans that they have submitted. However, I don't personally believe, and this is not why I'm not supporting this or why I'm moving that we do not grant consent, but I do not believe that they have really attempted seriously to address the situation of the aesthetics of the building in that location. And I do believe that had they discussed this with the neighbours, they may well have been able to find some points of compromise. At the moment, I see that there is no attempt to compromise with the neighbours or indeed the people who live along that street or in other parts of the Bonegilla Bonegilla area. It's a heritage area and therefore the developer does need to show that they are attempting in a more significant way than they have done in these plans. Clearly, the skillion roof does not lend itself in this development to be fitting the requirements of that area. As I've said, I have some sympathy with the developer, but I just don't think that they have taken sufficient steps to be able to mitigate for the neighbours and the other people in that street, and can only suggest that they undertake some consultation with our staff perhaps and the neighbours or people in that precinct to better resolve their application from the attempt of stage application 1 through to stage 2, and hopefully their next attempt will better meet the neighbours' expectations. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gleichen. Do you have a question from Councillor Vanna, or is it just the buttons accidentally depressed over there?
That I leant on the
okay.
do not use sign.
Okay. Councillor Con, there are no speakers against, so Councillor Con speaking for.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll try to be brief. We're essentially looking at the same DA as we did very recently, where this council refused to grant consent. The changes essentially many of them meet the conditions of the originally proposed DA, such as the change of colour. And if this were not substantially the same development, the staff would have required a new DA. So the fact that it's in front of us again means that it is substantially the same development. My understanding is that council intended to refuse consent to this item, but a second alternate motion wasn't moved. So it should be quite straightforward to support this motion tonight. And I support the reasons put forward on the screen by Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Vandervan, you're speaking for. There are no speakers against.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think there's been some attempt to ameliorate the design in terms of the discussions we had at the previous meeting, but the main emphasis of that meeting was that have some discussions with the neighbour about changing the design to more have a more friendly impact on the neighbouring properties, and that wasn't undertaken. So on that basis, I support the current motion.
Thank you. There appears to be no speakers for or against, or any questions. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to close debate on your motion?
No, simply to confirm that I trust that the developer will rethink, organise themselves with a view to discussing this with their neighbours and our staff to find an appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor King, Councillor Con, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Vandervan, and Councillor Max against. Thank you. The motion is carried. Okay. We have now got 13.4, and I might mention that Matthew Yeoman and David Hunter from Habitat Planning are also present online, and I might note that Councillor Vandervan and Councillor Thurley are also leaving the chamber as per their conflict declaration. So, councillors, if you have any questions of the consultants, they are available on Zoom at the moment. Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A receives and notes the report, and B resolves not to make a separate submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in relation to development application 10.2020.37909.1 being for the resource management facility PET plastic recycling on land described as lot 11 DP 247805 and lot 31 DP 121146 situated at 171 Drudgery Road, Edinburgh.
So the determination is resolved not to, is that what I heard? Yep, okay, thank you. So we'll just get that changed, and I'll get a seconder for you. Thank you. Councillor King.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to open debate?
Oh, look, only really briefly. There's a contentious, enormous benefit to the region from the recycling facility being located in Aubrey. Obviously, this isn't being determined by council. We have a significant conflict of interest because this is our land. The Southern Regional Planning Panel will be provided with all of the information that they need to make a decision on this, and I don't think that we need to make a submission either way.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, there are no speakers against. Councillor Glacken speaking for.
I simply wanted to note that in addition to Councillor Con's comments, that this initiative supports much of what Albury City has been trying to achieve for a number of years now, in fact, decades, and that's efficiency within our community and environmentally so. And so this is very supportive of Aubrey 2030 and very much of what the region has been attempting to undertake, or in fact making enormous steps towards over a number of years. So this is a fantastic opportunity.
Thank you. There appears to be no further questions or debate. Councillor Con, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll have to put the motion. All those in favour, Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con and Councillor Glacken. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. If we get our Councillor Vander and Councillor Thurley back, that'll be great. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman, return to the chamber. We're up to 13.5, the development application 10.2020.37908.1. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, and B grants development consent to development application 10.2020.37908.1, proposing the construction of a specialist disability accommodation comprising seniors housing with supported accommodation, living accommodation in a combination of residential care units and self-contained dwellings for persons with a disability, including a detached communal hub building, a movable shed, car parking and landscaping on lot 7 and 8 in DP 264529, addressed as 11 and 14 Canberra Court, and lot 56 in DP 874877, addressed as 12 Canberra Court, Lavington, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included as attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just open debate.
I just want to say it's fantastic to see these facilities being developed in our community. We really need to support independent living as much as we can, and I think this is a fantastic way of getting people supported accommodation, and I totally support this development.
Thank you. There being no further question or debate, I'll put the motion as a division. All those in favour, Councillors Touchbury, Councillor Doxy, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We're up to 13.6 now, the development application 10.20237934.1. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receives and note the content of the report, and B grants consent to development application 10.2020.37934.1 for the demolition of the existing residence and to build a multi-dwelling 3 housing development as a residential care facility, including car parking, landscaping and the removal of a palm tree in the front of lot situated at 457 Bounds Street, Lavington, and described as lot 3 in DP 23672, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, just open debate on that item.
Not debate, simply to really highlight the comments made by Councillor Thurley with the last development application, how fantastic it is for us in our community to be able to be supporting this type of development because it does so very significantly support our community, as Councillor Thurley quite rightly highlighted with the last development. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There's no further debate. I'm happy to put the motion as a division. All those in favour, Councillor Stutchby, Councillor Doxy, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderven. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.7, development application 10.20237794.1. Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, and B grants deferred commencement development consent to development application 10.20237794.1 for a group home development on land situated at the corner of Vickers Road and Dallinger Road, Lavington, described as lot 143 in DP 1164507, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Ditto for the last 2 motions. This is fantastic.
Thank you. There's no further question or debate. Happy to put the motion as division. Those in favour, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxy, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We're up to 13.8. Development application DA 10.2020.37930.1. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be able to speak and look. I move the following as a motion that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, B, grants consent to development application 10.2020.37.930.1 for office development and associated planning agreement at 451, 459 Kiwa Street, Aubrey, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 to this report. C, agrees to enter into planning agreement for the payment of monetary contributions in lieu of 11 car parking spaces as outlined in the draft planning agreement between Aubrey City Council and Urquhart Investments Proprietary Limited. And D, hereby authorises the seal to be affixed to the planning agreement as part of the determination of the development application 10.2020.37.930.1 in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the Council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, you run out of breath. Did you want to speak to that motion?
I won't. I'll reserve right of reply, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Well, it looks like you might have a right of reply. There's no further people wishing to speak. Did you wish to reply?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'm happy to put that motion to the division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor King, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vandervan. The motion is resoundingly carried. Okay, that's the development applications completed for this evening. 13.9, bank and bill payment services. Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council accepts the tender from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia for the schedule of rates contract number FIL 20/02054 for banking and bill payment services for a 4-year period commencing 1st January 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second. Thank you.
Councillor Thurley, I have a question from Councillor Vandervan. You wish me to take that for open debate?
Yes,
Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note in the report that there was some funding put aside to assist in the transition to a new supplier or provider. Can I get some indication of what that provision might have been in terms of the quantum of that provision?
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question. In terms of a provision, there's no budget provision as such, but just to understand the cost implications of changing banking providers. That's why an estimate was included in the assessment to fully understand the cost of a contract and the cost of change. And so while an overall estimate in the order of $35,000 was used, in terms of additional expenditure by Aubrey City, that's likely to be in order of $15,000 in terms of software changes and integrations. In terms of the balance being around $20,000, that's more the utilisation of internal resources and our people to manage the change process. So it was an estimate used to understand the cost implications of each of the contracts.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Finlayson. Councillor Thurley, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, no further question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.10, Aubrey CBD parking special rate. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receives a note to report regarding the Aubrey CBD's parking special rate review. B endorses the option of transitioning from the Aubrey CBD parking special rate to ordinary rates over a period of 4 years. And C seeks public submission to this proposal as part of the public exhibition of Aubrey City's draft 2021-22 statement revenue policy during May 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Very briefly, we discussed this in a pre-briefing session, and there were a lot of submissions from the public and various businesses in the city, and I think we've arrived at a very good compromise to change this rate policy, and it will go out on, obviously, on public display to get further feedback.
Thank you. There being no further questions or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, 13.11 Fredericks Park and Murray Park draft master plans. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as a motion that Council receives and endorses the draft Fredericks Park Master Plan and draft Murray Park Master Plan. B, places the draft Fredericks Park Master Plan and draft Murray Park Master Plan on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days. And if no submissions are received through the public exhibition process, then the master plans be adopted as the final versions.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurr, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor, through you to the relevant member of staff. I note in the report that the issue of the second netball court is mentioned once again. Can I get some update, given the state of the North Aubrey Sporting Club, as to what the likelihood or timetable of that might be?
Mr. Zachnich, yes.
Thanks very much for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's no hard timeline on the second netball court. Conversations and negotiations will be ongoing, and at such time that there's a desired or a real need for the second court, is that the timeframes that we'd be working towards bringing that online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. We have a mover, Councillor Con. Let's speak to your motion.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Only briefly to say that these are obviously both parks that generated a lot of interest from the community. People really engaged in the Have a Say process and submitted some fantastic ideas. I'm sure they'll be really pleased to participate in this process now, and I think some things in these master plans are really long awaited or needed facilities. Particularly, I've received a lot of correspondence about the need for an area for children to learn and practice how to ride bicycles, and also for jumps, etc., like a pump track, and seeing those both in the draft Fredericks Park Master Plan, I think is really addressing an unmet need in the community. And I look forward to receiving their feedback after the public exhibition.
Thank you. There appears to be no further question or debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.12, the review of the undetected leak policy for water and wastewater charges. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the motion or the recommendation motion that Council A receive and notes the review of Council's undetected leak policy for water and wastewater charges, and B, adopts the revised undetected leak policy for water and wastewater charges.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to open debate on the undetected leak policy?
Permitted a question first.
Yes, you shall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the relevant member of staff, Mr. Worley, I think it is. Just a quick one, and there was a small spelling mistake, but why have you recommended that there be no statutory declaration included with an application?
Mr. Worley.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. It's seen that the safeguards with regards to assessing the water billing information over a period of 3 years in order to ascertain whether there is a true undetected leak, and the addition of a report from a licensed plumber was deemed to be sufficient to safeguard any fraudulent claims.
Okay, thank you. And obviously that provides some information around which that satisfies me in terms of why that has happened. So, look, I think that this is a good example of common sense coming to the fore, and using some experience in this policy to review and make a policy a lot better in terms of the customer, in terms of the officers as well. So, yeah, I recommend this policy to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Keane, do you wish to speak for the motion?
Yes, I'm speaking for, and this is a good common sense approach. For I was a victim of water leakage, and to the credit of the council staff, they actually contacted me and said that there's been a spike in your water consumption, which I then fixed up. I then, though, had the fairly onerous sort of process of going through to actually justify it to get any sort of rebate, which I was unsuccessful with, even though the council rang me and said you've used all this water. So it's good to see that we've had a real world common sense approach to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. There are no further further people wishing to debate this item. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to close the
No,
debate?
thanks, Mr Mayor.
I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. 13.13, Annual Aubrey City Compliance Priorities Program 2021. Thank you, Councillor Vanderman.
I move the recommendation motion the council adopts the draft annual Albury City Compliance Priorities Program 1 January to 31 December 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Look, yes, and I think that obviously the results in terms of priorities was clearly a councillor input priorities from what the councillors believe were what should be high priorities, and it's great to see that that's reflected in the report. And it'll be interesting to see now what that results in terms of compliance changes. Compliance incidents that are reported next year with a specific emphasis on those high priority items. So I look forward to getting better outcomes in some of those areas and obviously then having that reported back to us next year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. No further questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.15, the Aubrey City, 14, amendments to the Code of Conduct and Procedures for the administration of the Code of Conduct. Yes. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receives and notes the report. I remove item B so that the cap on token value gifts remains at $50. C endorses the revised draft Code of Conduct for Aubrey City. D endorses the revised draft procedures for the administration of the Code of Conduct for Aubrey City. E places the revised draft Code of Conduct and draft procedures for administration of the Code of Conduct on public exhibition for 28 days. And F adopts the revised Code of Conduct and the procedures for the administration of the Code of Conduct in the event no submissions are received.
Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second that.
Councillor Thurley, just open debate.
Certainly, Mr Mayor. I give my grandchildren Christmas presents and I reckon they wouldn't think that $100 is token, and neither do I. If I'm a councillor and I'm at a meeting and someone wanted to give me a gift of $100, I wouldn't call that token. I think it's not a good sign, and that's why I'll go back to the original $50.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Vanderman.
I only speak against this change to the policy because we're changing a policy that has no teeth in the first instance. So I just want to make the point that this is the greatest waste of time document that the local government in New South Wales has ever put out. It has no teeth, no impacts on anybody. It appears that everything is fair go in terms of what councillors and what other people can do. So from my perspective, this is just an absolute waste of time. So I'm voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor Con speaking for.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support and echo all of the comments made by Councillor Thurley. And in speaking, just also wanted to note my own dissent to the removal of the cap on value of meals and refreshments that can be accepted during performance of official duties, but that's actually outside of the control of Aubrey City, and we're unable to influence that today. That change is being made by the Office of Local Government at state government and being imposed on us. So I support Councillor Thurley's proposal for the part of this decision that's been put in our hands, but I would have preferred for the state government to keep the cap on the value of meals and refreshments.
Thank you. There being no further questions or debate, Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate?
Only I do echo Councillor Vanderman's comments. It really is a fairly useless document. However, as a matter of procedure, I'm happy to vote and pass this.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.15, the Aubrey City Protocol for the Display of Civic Flags 2020. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A endorses the draft Albury City Civic Flag Display Protocol. B, publicly exhibit the Albury City Civic Flag Display Protocol for a minimum of 28 days and adopt the protocol in the event no submissions are received. C, include in the draft 2021-22 one-year operational plan funding for the installation of 2 additional flagpoles on the Albury City Administration Building to enable the display of the official Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island flags alongside the Australian national flag, and 2 additional flagpoles at the World War I Memorial Site to enable the display of the official Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island flags alongside existing national flags. D, maintain all other civic flag displays at existing Albury City sites as outlined in Table 1 of this report. And E, request that any proposed changes in regard to the display of flags at the World War I Memorial Site are made in consultation with Albury City RSL sub-branch and in line with its protocols.
Thank you. Councillor Stashbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, you wish to ask a question before we open debate? Okay.
My question is through you to the relevant member of staff, please. Part E of the recommendation is for future changes at the memorial site to be in line with the protocols of the RSL, and I was hoping you could please clarify for us what those protocols are.
Mr Zacknich.
Thanks for the question through you, Mr Mayor. So just referring to the New South Wales RSL information, most recent information was in February of this year, and a statement around the RSL continuing to honour the role that Indigenous veterans had undertaken in service of the country at its many commemorative services, including the use and placement of flags during commemorative services by the RSL New South Wales that will follow Australian national flag protocols, including which include the flying of the Australian Aboriginal flag and Torres Strait Islander flag. So that's its stated, the New South Wales RSL stated position in the matter. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Zacknich. Councillor Vanderin, you have a question?
Look, I do, Mr Mayor. A question of Councillor Con. On numerous occasions over the last 4 years, I've requested that we get some indication of when there's going to be something different, but I'm just a little bit confused about why we're doing this. Can I just have 30 seconds, please, to consider? Sorry.
Did you want Councillor Con to give you a response to why that alteration was made, Councillor Vanderin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd appreciate the opportunity to open debate, and that might answer what might have been Councillor Vanderin's question.
Okay.
I support the draft civic flag protocol as proposed, and note that tonight we're only moving to put it out for public consultation, and similarly Part C will be part of next year's budget that will also go out for public consultation. So these things will both go to the community and also come back to us. What I've proposed as the amendment to Part C is actually consistent with the draft protocol in Part A, and as per Mr Zacknich's answer, it's also consistent with the RSL protocols in Part E. So the amendment is simply for us to actually budget to make the changes that are proposed if the protocol ends up being approved as proposed in the draft. So I don't see that personally as a significant amendment to what's being proposed. And I think that if this is what we're putting forward to the community, we can make it really clear that the 2 changes that would mean in a practical sense in the next 12 months would be those 2 changes that are now clearly outlined in Part C. And I think they really meet the contemporary expectations of our community.
Councillor King, you have a question?
I've got a question to the relevant member of staff. How many motions have been changed today or tonight from their original recommendations? I think there's been 4 or 5 that have been not what was on the agenda. So I can't see why Councillor Con's matter, a bit of a change, is any different to Councillor Glacken's changes, Councillor Thiele's changes.
Mr Zacknich, have you been keeping count? I think it's 5 or 6, isn't it?
In that order, Mr Mayor, and the minutes will reflect that.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Vanderin, question before I got
yes,
2
a question to relevant member of staff.
Yep.
I I'll leave it, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, no, I can't ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken wishing to speak against the motion.
Simply to highlight something I have concerns with. I will, however, noting that this is really an item that we are saying will go out to public consultation. We're putting things in place in anticipation of the budget process, so I'm happy with that. My concern is that we are indicating in C that we are going against what the RSL have had in operation for many years on the basis that those flags were not in existence during the period of World War I, so the additional flags, in the period of World War I, or when the War Memorial was built and consecrated. So I am simply speaking against to flag my concerns that we would be trying to impose something retrospectively that is not consistent with that period of World War I or indeed the creation of our War Memorial monument. However, I will vote I believe I will be voting to support this motion this evening.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Thurley.
It almost seems redundant now, but I'll ask it again. Mr. Zachnich, through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Zachnich, this is not against any RSL protocol. If I heard you correctly, to install 2 extra flagpoles is not against an RSL protocol.
Mr. Zachnich.
Yes, thanks for the question. That's the case. The RSL protocols are clear around their support for the use and placement of flags, including the Australian national flags, which includes the flying of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags. Clearly, in order for those flags to be enabled to be flown, flagpoles will need to be erected in those locations, including the front of this building and as proposed at the War Memorial. Again, these proposals will be, as per the recommendation, placed out for public and community comment and exhibition, including input from the Aubrey RSL as per item E in the proposed recommendation.
Follow-up?
No, I'll speak to the motion if I can, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, continue.
This is a proposition to put something out on public display and seek feedback. So the debate, I don't believe we need to debate this matter tonight. Councillor Con has proposed a motion. It'll go out on public display. If the public says this is a ridiculous idea and we don't support it, we either say, well, we don't care and we're not going to listen to you, or we hear the public comments and we make our decision. I've forgotten where the timeline is. When it comes back to us, we make the decision at a later date. We have plenty of opportunity on that date to express our own views and listen to what community feedback is. So procedural matter, we're going out to ask you, what do you think?
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Minimum of 28 days is mentioned on the report on the motion. Thank you. There's further no questions or debate. Councillor Con, did you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief if there's no substantive opposition to the motion. I support the proposed protocol. I think it's in keeping with contemporary expectations of our community. We have a number of official flags in Australia, and I think people expect those to be flown at significant civic sites in the city. That includes Monument Hill, and obviously the exception to the general rule that's in place at Monument Hill is to continue flying the New Zealand flag, as I understand has been done for a very long time, and I think that's entirely appropriate. So I look forward to receiving community feedback. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we're up to 13.16, Aubrey Aquatics Facility Advisory Committee. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council endorses the revised terms of reference for the Aubrey Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glaken, do you wish to speak to that?
Very briefly, the terms of reference being revised simply because this committee was originally anticipated to be a sunset committee, but due to the ongoing aquatics facilities within Aubrey, it's appropriate that this committee be aligned with the other sporting and community committees that already work with council. So this is very much in alignment with the other, for example, sporting committees that we have for Aubrey City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glaken. There appears to be no further question or debate. I just want to confirm the point you make is that there was some distraction about what this committee's terms of references were, and it's encouraging to see that in the report that it'll be linked with the regional deal and the current discussions with Two Cities One Community and identification of suitable water for indoor usage, and certainly the existing facilities we have here, Lavington and Aubrey, are part of their remit. So I think it is a good place to start. I think, again, the users and the stakeholders should be involved in that discussion. So, yeah, I commend that report. So happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.17, Mama Governance Review. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receives and notes the findings of the consultant's report. B, endorses the company limited by guarantee as the preferred governance model for Mama. Proceed with a transition plan, including key supporting documentation, and provide a further report to Council by September 2021. And C, extends the terms of Mama Advisory Committee members to May 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Yeah, look, I think that this is the most appropriate entity to move Mama forward in terms of having a really strong directorship and also a greater, if you like, accountability and a greater emphasis on an organisation which can attract charitable donations and setting this company aside and not being an Albury city entity as such will probably, or will hopefully, provide a greater incentive, if you like, for people to make those donations, which will guarantee the future of Mama in terms of the exhibits and other items that are available for people to look at in that facility.
Thank you. No further question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.18, the public CCTV biennial report 2018 to 2020. Do we need to start? Is there something about this item being withdrawn, Ms. Guire?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're recommending that Council actually defer consideration of the report until February. And Terence, if you could perhaps just put that recommendation up for Council to consider. Thank you.
Councillor Conn.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council defer consideration of the public CCTV biennial report 2018 to 2020 and receive an updated report in February 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Conn, do you wish to speak to that?
Look, only briefly, there were some significant errors in the report and staff have kindly offered to amend those and represent it to us in February. I think that's the most appropriate way forward.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Okay, we're up to 14.1, Officer Reports for Noting, Investment Balances 2020 November. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to move a recommendation motion. The Council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of November 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No further questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 14.2, the Aubrey City 2019-20 annual report. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives and notes Aubrey City's 2019-2020 annual report that is to be submitted to the Minister for Local Government by 31 December 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to open debate?
I'd just like to note that the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee complimented the staff on the quality of this report, and I'd like to add my congratulations to the quality of this report. It's a great report and shows the city off extremely well.
Thank you. Okay, no further question or debate. I'd like to echo those sentiments too, Councillor Thurley, that the report is a wonderful document. It showcases the performance of this council over the last 12 months, which has been quite a difficult time for that part of the financial year, but also the ongoing challenges we have as a council, and certainly servicing our community at a high level has never been beyond reproach. So congratulations on the document and certainly on the outcomes. So happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Okay, we're up to 14.3, the New South Wales Audit Office reports. Councillor Vandervan.
I move the recommendations motion. The council receives and notes the auditor's report issued by the New South Wales Audit Office regarding Aubrey City's 2019-20 financial statements.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to speak to that?
Just to take a sentence from the report, the New South Wales Audit Office has issued an unmodified audit opinion. I think that says it all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. No further question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 14.4, Code of Conduct Statistics Annual Report to Office of Local Government. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives and notes the report on statistics on Code of Conduct complaints about councillors and the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There's no question or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no delegates reports for noting. There are no any notices of urgent business, councillors. Any late entries? No. And there is no confidential matters. I'd just like to wind up this last meeting of the year by saying thank you to the councillors and to the staff and everyone that's contributed to the last 12 months. It has been a journey, and thankfully we're through this part of the journey, and hopefully the next 12 months will be a better journey. Thanks very much, and thanks for your attendance.